Welcome back. Aled Ab El Fattah has been in and out of an Egyptian jail since 2011. An activist, he had a prominent role in the Arab Spring uprising. After an appeal from the United Nations, he was released, but he's currently serving time in prison for a Facebook post criticising the government. His family are trying to get help from the UK government to get him freed. Earlier, I spoke to his sister Sanaa, currently living in the UK and once arrested and imprisoned herself, about their campaign. Sanaa, thanks for coming on the show today. We want to talk about your story today, but I want to talk to you first about your brother, Allah, who's detained in Egypt. Before we get on to what's happening with him, can you tell me a bit about him?
Thank you for having me first. Allah publicly is known to be a programmer, writer, and a pro-democracy, secular human rights activist.
Yeah.
But as a person, like as a brother, he's my older brother. I'm the baby sister. So we're friends, but there's also this mentorship kind of dynamic. He's the person in the family he's a bit of he's always been kind of a nerd. He likes to read a lot. He's about everything, to engage with everything.
Can you tell me sort of what happened to him and how he ended up in prison, how he got out of prison and why he's back in prison now?
We were interested in the political situation in Egypt. My bereaved father was a human rights lawyer, and Allah, because he was a programmer and technologist, he was really interested in empowering people, like localizing tools, making them available in Arabic, and by that empowering people to communicate and to organize. That was pre the social media movement. And so when 2011 happened, he kind of became a prominent figure because of the work he did in the bloggers movement. And with the family background, we gained some prominence. And then in 2013, when the backlash happened and the military basically took charge, we became one of the, as a family, but Ale especially, we became one of the main targets of the regime.
So he went to prison in 2011. He was released and he's now back in prison. Why does President Sisi see him as such a threat? Because he means something to other people, that he's a symbol of what rebellion, of an alternative future. He seems to be a real threat to the government, or they perceive him to be.
Yeah, it's something that we don't know for sure why. I mean, our assessment is that they kind of... We were known by a few people before the attack, like the vicious attack happened to us in 2013, but I think they kind of created their own... it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they tried to set an example with Ale, and so they so viciously attacked him. And Ale was sentenced to 5 years for a demonstration, and a demonstration he did not organize, or the organizers actually went to court and showed evidence that they are the organizers, and the court decided to dismiss that.
So he served 5 years for that.
And he served 5.
And then he came out.
And he came out, and then they re-arrested him again and put him on new charges.
What
for a Facebook post. A Facebook post he did not write, a Facebook post he shared about human rights violations happening in a prison. So the details could be confusing and are not confusing, but exhausting to tell and to listen to. But I think it's that keep building up.
So he was falsely... So there was what? It was a false imprisonment. The first time you would argue it was a false imprisonment, but the second time they kind of constructed a case to re-arrest him.
Yeah, both times we constructed Ale, and actually in Egypt it's quite a known fact now that the legal things are just details that. Everybody knows that Ale is not... So technically, Ale is in prison for a Facebook post. But everybody knows that genuinely Ali is not in prison for a Facebook post. So he's in prison because he represents something. He represents something for a younger generation.
How's he doing in prison? Have you seen him?
Last time I saw Ali was in March before I left Cairo. My sister saw him last week. So the way we see Ali is, for the past 3 years, the visits are behind a glass shield with a phone speaker. Ali, in April 2nd, he started a hunger strike. So today would be day 75 of his hunger strike. I haven't seen him since the hunger strike, but what my sister explains to me is really terrifying because I was outside the country. Last visit, my sister came out. When I called her and my mom. They really sounded distressed. They said he looks very weak. It's like he's only skin on bones. Mona, my sister, because of how shocked she was, she couldn't eat since, and she just told me, I feel like I have to use my body as a portal to show that what's happening to Ali, because the Egyptian authorities are using the fact that they can hide him in a dark cell and not show to the...
So has Mona gone on a hunger...
Today would be her fourth day.
That's difficult.
Okay, well, sorry. I should explain from the beginning, right?
It's fine,
sorry.
it's fine.
Okay, so what led Ali to the strike was that for the past few years, his conditions were really, really bad. He wasn't allowed anything. He was isolated from any outside input. So he wasn't allowed books, time outside of his cell. They wouldn't even allow him a clock to be aware of the time of the day.
Right.
And he was in a maximum security prison that is built on the whole premise of the war on terrorism, while he's not on terrorism charges. He's actually on a misdemeanor. And it's a freedom of expression issue, but it's also like legally a misdemeanor. So we kept on filing complaints, but it led to nothing. So Ali decided he was feeling really that, because in prison you don't have agency over anything but your body.
Yeah.
So when he was totally fed up, when he couldn't take it anymore, he decided to start a hunger strike.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, so on day 55, when they made this little compromise from their behalf, he also made a little compromise and started taking 100 calories a day. He said, I switched to a Gandhi-style strike.
Right, OK.
So a human being should take around 2,000 calories a day. Ali takes 100 calories. If his conditions improve or if he gets consular access, he could make more compromises.
Just before we get to his release and your campaign, I just wanted to ask you about your time in prison, because you, Naifat, you were also arrested, weren't you? Can you tell us what happened to you?
Yeah, so I was imprisoned over the past 10 years, 3 times. Each of those times has its story, but they all come down to one thing, to the fact that as family, we're being punished because we're vocal about the assaults or the violations that happened to Ali. So this last time, I served a 1.5-year sentence. I was arrested after trying to get a letter into my brother.
Let's get back to your brother. He spent a lot of time in detention. He's got a sentence until 2027, I believe. How hopeful are you of getting him out? And have you received any assistance from the UK government to help you? Your mother was born in the UK and you are all dual citizens, and so he does fall under the remit of the UK government. Yeah,
for the first time now, in the last 9 years, I'm actually very hopeful, although we are at a moment of desperation, but we're also at a moment of possibility. Ali's case is very complicated if you think of it locally, but there is precedence. And there is a law that was issued in 2015 for dual nationals, for specifically cases like Ali, and there is precedent with the US, with Australia, and with France. that they would basically, for political prisoners, they would basically renounce their other citizenship and be deported to their other country of residence. And of course, in Alet's case, if he was deported here, none of the case file here wouldn't be. I mean, he wouldn't be considered a criminal. This is obviously a freedom of expression issue.
You need the Foreign Secretary to get involved.
Yes, we need the Foreign Secretary, and I'm confused. I'm not sure why, because I can see that there is a lot of sympathy. I can see that there is support. We're always in touch with the embassy, and so I'm confused as to why we haven't met with the Foreign Secretary yet.
So you haven't met with the Foreign Secretary. If you could ask the Prime Minister or the Foreign Secretary, Liz Truss, to do one thing, what would it be?
To meet with us, basically. But ultimately, I know that a firm phone call from the Prime Minister, followed by a robust negotiation from the FCDO, will get Ale out. I know that. We've seen that with the French. We've seen that with the Americans.
You've recently joined forces with Richard Ratcliffe, and you've also just had more than 1,000 celebrities, from Dame Judi Dench to Mark Ruffalo, Carrie Mulligan, urging Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, and her US counterpart Antony Blinken to use their diplomatic force to try and get your brother freed. You've got momentum now, but you still think the British government aren't really listening? Is it just not a priority for them because they've got other more important in their views?
I'm really confused. That's why I'm really confused. I see sympathy and we have momentum and we have solidarity and support from other governments in the West. And relationships between Egypt and Britain are very strong. This is not something that's going to jeopardize those relationships. Actually, this gives the UK leverage. That's why I'm genuinely puzzled as to why we're not getting the attention we need from the Foreign Secretary.
How hopeful are you that you might be able to see your brother not behind a glass partition, but actually face to face by the end of this year, say?
Again, I'm now hopeful more than ever. Ale is not, unfortunately. But I understand that from his perspective, Ale believes he's going to die in prison. I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful, and I think it's easy. It's simple if we get to the right people, and I think there is precedence. We know the recipe as to how to do it. French did it, the US did it, and UK is definitely capable of doing it.
Okay. Well, Sanaa, thank you so much for telling us your story, and I hope your brother gets out soon and gets healthy and gets to see you and his son and all his family again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure.